You ever have a moment when the people you love most make you feel invisible? That's me. My name is Martha Taylor, and for over 40 years, I held my family together, sometimes with little more than grit and late-night prayers. But when they left me alone on Thanksgiving, something inside me broke. If you've ever been pushed aside by the ones you've given everything to, this story is for you. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine. Now, let me take you through the chapters of how I went from overlooked to unforgettable. Mom, you can't be serious about those new menu items. David's voice cut through the morning clatter of the diner. People come here for comfort food, not quinoa bowls. I wiped my hands on my apron and faced my oldest son across the counter. At 64, I was tired of defending my decisions. In the business I'd built, the quinoa bowls were Linda's idea, and they're selling well with the lunch crowd, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. David sighed dramatically. This is why you need me more involved in management decisions. The profit margins on those health foods are terrible. Not everything is about profit margins, I said, refilling a customer's coffee cup. Everything is about profit margins when you're running a business, Mom. He checked his watch. I've got to run. Emily's got that thing at Tommy's school. We still on for Thanksgiving at your place? I nodded. Same as every year. After he left, Linda emerged from the kitchen, eyebrows raised. He sure knows how to start the day, doesn't he? That's just David being David. I forced a smile. He means well. He means to take over, Linda said, straightening menus. You've been running this place for what, 35 years now? Since before Frank passed? Frank. My chest tightened at the mention of my husband. 8 years gone, and sometimes the grief still felt fresh. David thinks I'm getting too old, I admitted. Maybe he's right. Nonsense. Linda squeezed my shoulder. This place would fall apart without you. The lunch rush brought Rebecca in with her 2 children. She barely looked up from her phone as they settled into a booth. Mom, can you watch Tommy and Lily this weekend? Chris and I need to go to this work retreat thing. Hello to you too, I said, kissing my grandchildren's foreheads. Of course I can. You're the best. Rebecca finally glanced up. Oh, and can you make those special pancakes they love for breakfast? The ones with the chocolate chips? I always do. After they left, Mr. Wilson, our oldest regular, caught my eye from his usual spot. Those kids of yours sure know how to ask for favors. I smiled tightly. They're busy with their own lives. Too busy to see what's right in front of them, he muttered. That evening, Jason called to borrow money. Again. My youngest had never quite found his footing. It's just until next month, Mom. The contractor job is starting soon, I promise. How much? I asked, already reaching for my checkbook. Just 800. Sophie's car broke down and... I'll transfer it tonight, I interrupted. You're a lifesaver. He paused. Oh, about Thanksgiving. My heart sank. You're not coming. Sophie's parents invited us to their cabin. It's kind of a big deal. First holiday with them and all. I stared at the family photo on my wall. Frank and me with the 3 kids, taken the year before his diagnosis. I understand. Later, alone in the house that once burst with noise, I thumbed through old photo albums, the early days of the diner when Frank and I worked 18-hour shifts, the mortgage papers we'd finally paid off, the kids' graduations, all those moments when I thought we were building something that would last. Where did I go wrong? I whispered to Frank's smiling face in the photograph. When did I become someone they could just push aside? The phone rang. It was David. Mom, about Thanksgiving. Emily's mother is feeling lonely, so we might split the day between both houses. We'll try to make it for dessert, okay? After we hung up, I realized I was clutching the receiver so hard my knuckles had turned white. In bed that night, I remembered something Frank used to say. Martha, you hold this family together, like glue, but don't let them mistake your kindness for weakness. I never understood what he meant until now. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and chilly. I'd been up since 5, prepping the turkey and making my grandmother's cornbread dressing. Old habits die hard, even when you suspect you'll be dining alone. The phone rang at 11. Mom? Rebecca's voice had that practiced apologetic tone I'd grown to recognize. Tommy woke up with a fever, and I think Lily's catching it too. We're going to have to skip dinner today. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I adjusted the oven temperature. Do you need me to bring some soup over? No. Chris already got some from the store. A pause. Maybe we can do a rain check next weekend. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by preparations for a feast with no guests. At noon, David called. Change of plans, Mom. Emily's mother is pretty upset, so we're going to spend the whole day there. I know it's last minute. It's fine. I interrupted, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Family comes first. Exactly, he agreed, missing my point entirely. We'll make it up to you. I hung up and looked at the 20-pound turkey roasting in the oven, the cranberry sauce cooling on the counter, the pumpkin and pecan pies I'd baked last night. The doorbell rang at 3 o'clock. For a hopeful moment, I thought one of my children had changed their minds, but it was Linda, holding a small container. Leftover stuffing from our lunch, she explained. Mind if I come in? She stopped in the doorway of my dining room, taking in the perfectly set table for 6. Oh, Martha. They all cancelled. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Linda set down her container and wrapped me in a hug. Their loss. I made all their favorites. I gestured to the kitchen. David's favorite bourbon sweet potatoes. Rebecca's children love those mini marshmallow salads. Jason always wants extra gravy. You remembered everyone's preferences except your own, Linda noted. We sat in my living room with plates balanced on our knees, the dining room table too formal for just the two of us. Have you seen this? Linda held up her phone, showing me David's social media post, his family smiling around his mother-in-law's table. The caption read, Traditional Thanksgiving with family. Grateful for everyone here. Something cracked inside me. Everyone except his mother, apparently. Linda set down her fork. Martha, when was the last time you did something just for yourself? I couldn't remember. After Linda left, I scrolled through my own phone. A text from Rebecca. Hope you're not too lonely today. We'll see you soon. A missed call from Jason, but no voicemail. I walked through my empty house, past the photographs of graduations I'd paid for, the kitchen I'd renovated to host family gatherings, the porch swing, where I'd comforted crying children and grandchildren. For the first time in years, I let myself cry openly. Not delicate tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that bent me double over my kitchen sink. Frank, I whispered to the empty room. I don't think I can do this anymore. Outside, darkness fell, and the leftovers cooled on the counter. I'd spent 40 years making space for everyone else. Tonight, for the first time, I allowed myself to feel the emptiness they'd left behind. The day after Thanksgiving, I opened the diner as usual. Black Friday brought in the shoppers seeking refuge from mall chaos, and we were busier than normal. I was refilling coffees when David walked in with Rebecca. "There she is," David announced, as if I might be hiding in my own diner. Rebecca gave me a quick hug. "Sorry about yesterday. The kids are feeling better now." I nodded, continuing my rounds with the coffee pot. "Table 6 needs menus, Linda." "Mom, we need to talk to you," David said, blocking my path. "It's important." "I'm working." I gestured to the full diner. "It'll just take a minute," Rebecca insisted. I led them to the small office in the back, aware of curious glances from the staff. The moment the door closed, David launched in. "We've been looking at the quarterly reports," he began. "We?" I asked. "Rebecca and I," David replied. "And frankly, Mom, the numbers aren't great. The profit margins are slipping." Rebecca nodded. "We're concerned." "I wasn't aware the business finances were any of your concern," I said quietly. David's eyebrows shot up. "Of course they're our concern. This is our family legacy." "Your legacy," I corrected. "Not your inheritance. Not yet." "Mom," Rebecca's voice softened. "We're just worried about you. You're working too hard at your age." "My age?" I repeated. "What Rebecca means," David interjected, "is that maybe it's time to think about stepping back. Let me take over the day-to-day operations." "And what would I do then?" I asked. David shrugged. "Enjoy your retirement. Spend time with the grandkids. Normal grandmother stuff." "Normal grandmother stuff," I echoed. "While you run the business I built." "That Dad built," David corrected. "And yes, as the oldest son." The door opened, and Linda poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but we're slammed out there, Martha." "I'll be right out," I told her. "Mom, we're not finished discussing this," David insisted. I stood up. "I am." As I walked past them, Rebecca called after me. "We're just trying to help." I turned back. "No, you're trying to take what isn't yours to take." Back in the diner, Mr. Wilson caught my eye from his usual spot. "Everything okay, Martha? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just family business," I managed. "Ah," he nodded knowingly. "The worst kind." By closing time, my hands were shaking with suppressed anger. Linda found me counting the register with more force than necessary. "You want to talk about what happened?" she asked. "They want the diner," I said flatly. "David thinks it's his birthright." "And what do you think?" I looked around at the place Frank and I had built from nothing. The booths we'd reupholstered ourselves. The counter where my children had done homework. The kitchen that put them through college. "I think," I said slowly, "that I'm tired of being invisible. They have no idea what this place is really worth." Linda commented the next morning, as we prepped for breakfast service. I looked up from slicing oranges. "What do you mean?" She leaned against the counter. "The property alone, Martha. Downtown. Real estate like this, plus a successful business with 40 years of goodwill. You're sitting on a gold mine." The thought had never occurred to me. The diner wasn't an asset. It was my life. "Frank always handled the finances," I admitted. "After he died, I just kept things running." "Maybe it's time you took a closer look at what you've built," Linda suggested. That afternoon, I pulled out the file box labeled "Business" from the hall closet. Inside were 40 years of paperwork. Deeds, insurance policies, tax returns, and bank statements. The phone rang while I was spreading documents across my dining room table. "Hi, Mom." Jason's voice sounded sheepish. "Just checking in. How was your Thanksgiving?" "Quiet," I replied. "Yeah, sorry about that." Sophie's parents were really counting on us being there, and It's fine, Jason. I fingered the edge of the original diner deed. Frank and Martha Taylor, joint owners. Did you need something? Actually, yeah. Sophie and I are thinking about getting a place together, and we're a little short on the security deposit. How much? I interrupted. Just $1,500. I'll pay you back as soon as... I'll think about it, I said, surprising both of us. You'll... think about it. He sounded confused. I'd never hesitated before. Yes. I'll let you know tomorrow. After we hung up, I returned to the paperwork. The mortgage had been paid off 5 years ago, a fact I'd never shared with my children. The property taxes had tripled since we'd bought the place, and according to last year's appraisal for insurance purposes, the building and business were worth over $2 million. I called Linda. Did you know? I asked when she picked up. Know what? What the diner is worth. She was quiet for a moment. I had an idea. Does this change things? I'm not sure, I admitted. But I've been thinking about what you said, about doing something for myself. It's about time, Martha. The next day, I made an appointment with Mr. Jenkins, the lawyer who had handled Frank's will. Martha, he greeted me warmly. It's been too long. What can I do for you? I need to understand my options, I explained. With the diner, the property, everything. He peered at me over his glasses. Are you considering selling? I'm considering. Everything. 2 hours later, I left his office with clarity I hadn't felt in years. The diner, the property, our savings. Everything was in my name. Frank had made sure of that. Smart man, your husband, Mr. Jenkins had said. He wanted to make sure you were protected. That evening, David called. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation at the diner. I didn't approach it the right way. No, you didn't, I agreed. How about I come by tomorrow and we can discuss transition plans? I've got some ideas for modernizing operations. I took a deep breath. David, before we have that conversation, I need time to think about what I want. What you want? He sounded genuinely confused. Don't you want what's best for the family? That's exactly what I'm trying to determine, I replied. After we hung up, I sat in Frank's old armchair, surrounded by documentation of our life's work. What would you do, Frank? I whispered. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice. Don't let them rush you, Martha. You built this life. You get to decide what happens next. The next morning, Mr. Wilson settled into his usual spot at the counter. You look different today, Martha, he observed, standing taller. I poured his coffee. Just seeing things, clearly for the first time in a while. He nodded sagely. Clarity's a gift at our age. Most folks never get there. Did you know, I found myself saying, that I put all 3 of my children through college on diner profits? Doesn't surprise me. Good coffee and better pie will fund a lot of education. They don't know that, I continued. They think Frank had life insurance. Mr. Wilson stirred his coffee thoughtfully. Might be time they learned a few things, Martha. For once, I agreed. A commercial real estate broker, Linda repeated when I told her about my meeting. You're really thinking about selling? We were closing up the diner, wiping down counters in the empty restaurant. I'm thinking about options, I clarified. Knowledge is power. Isn't that what they say? And what does this knowledge tell you? She asked. I paused, spray bottle in hand. That I've been undervaluing myself for years. The next morning, I met with Elaine Cooper from Riverside Commercial Properties. She walked through the diner with appraising eyes, making notes on her tablet. "Location is excellent," she commented. "Corner lot, walking distance to downtown, established customer base. What's your annual revenue?" I showed her the numbers. Her eyebrows rose. "Mrs. Taylor, have you considered what you might do after selling?" The question caught me off guard. "I haven't gotten that far." She smiled. "Most of my clients have dreams they've put on hold. Travel, perhaps. A beach house." Later, I sat in my garden, contemplating her question. What did I want? For so long, my dreams had been secondary to everyone else's. The phone rang. Rebecca. "Mom, I was thinking about stopping by with the kids this weekend. They miss you." "That would be nice," I said genuinely. Despite everything, I loved my grandchildren fiercely. "Great. Oh, and David mentioned you two had a conversation about the diner. He seems to think you're being—" She hesitated. "Difficult." My momentary warmth cooled. "Is that why you're bringing the children over? To soften me up?" "Mom, of course not." Her tone suggested otherwise. "We're just concerned, that's all." "About me? Or about your inheritance?" Silence stretched between us then. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I asked quietly. "When was the last time any of you asked what I wanted?" After we hung up, I called Mr. Jenkins again. "I'd like to proceed with getting everything in order," I told him, just in case. The next day, a different appraiser walked through the diner, this one arranged by Mr. Jenkins to provide an independent valuation. "Who's the suit?" Linda asked after he left. "Someone helping me understand my worth," I replied. That evening, Jason showed up at my doctor unannounced. "Mom, did you decide about the loan?" he asked, following me into the kitchen. I handed him a mug of tea. "I did. I'm not comfortable lending you that amount right now." His face fell. "But you always help out. Is this because I missed Thanksgiving? Because I'm really sorry about that?" "It's not about Thanksgiving," I interrupted. "It's about me needing to make different choices." "Different how?" His eyes narrowed. "Has David been talking to you?" "This has nothing to do with your brother," I assured him. "I'm just reevaluating." "Reevaluating what exactly?" I met his gaze. "Everything." The next few days passed in a blur of quiet preparations. Mr. Jenkins helped me organize my finances and understand the tax implications of various decisions. The appraiser's report came back even higher than I'd anticipated. Elaine Cooper presented me with a marketing plan for the property. Through it all, I maintained my regular schedule at the diner, greeting customers and making pie as I had for decades. Only Linda noticed the difference in me. "You're up to something," she remarked one afternoon. "You've got that look Frank used to get when he was plotting." I smiled slightly. I learned from the best. That weekend, Rebecca brought the children, as promised. Tommy ran straight for the cookie jar while Lily wrapped her arms around my legs. "Grandma, we missed you!" Lily exclaimed. I hugged her tightly. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Rebecca watched us from the doorway. "The kids were wondering if they could stay overnight. Chris and I have that dinner thing." "Of course," I agreed readily. Later, after the children were asleep, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine. The evening was peaceful, the neighborhood quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of certainty. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Mom, we need to talk about the diner." Family meeting tomorrow. I typed back, "Not tomorrow. I'll let you know when I'm ready." His response was immediate. "Ready for what exactly?" I didn't answer. The next morning, Mr. Wilson took his usual spot at the counter. "You've got that look of a woman who's made up her mind," he observed. I refilled his coffee. "Is it that obvious?" He chuckled. "Only to someone who's been watching you serve coffee for 30 years. I lowered my voice. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Wilson? Do you think it's selfish to want recognition for your work?" "Selfish?" He seemed genuinely surprised. "Martha, it's the most natural thing in the world to want your contributions acknowledged. Even when it's family? Especially when it's family." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "The people who should see you most clearly are often the blindest to your worth." His words stayed with me all day. That evening I finalized my decision and called Mr. Jenkins. "I'd like to proceed," I told him, "with everything we discussed." "Are you certain?" he asked. "This will change things significantly." "I'm certain," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It's time. The "For Sale" sign appeared on a Tuesday morning, positioned prominently in the diner's front window. Impossible to miss. I didn't tell anyone it was coming, not even Linda. Some moments you need to experience fully on your own. David was the first to notice. He stormed in during the lunch rush, sign in hand. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, slapping it on the counter. I continued wiping glasses. "It appears to be a 'For Sale' sign." "I can see that," he snapped. "Why is it in the window?" Several customers glanced our way. I lowered my voice. "Because I'm selling the diner." His face flushed deep red. "Without discussing it with your family? Without discussing it with me?" "I wasn't aware I needed your permission to sell my own property," I replied evenly. "Mom." He leaned across the counter. "You can't do this. The diner is our legacy." "My legacy," I corrected. "To do with as I see fit." By afternoon, Rebecca and Jason had both arrived, summoned by an urgent call from their brother. The three of them huddled at a corner table, shooting glances my way. Linda sidled up beside me. "The vultures are circling." "Let them circle," I said, surprisingly calm. Rebecca approached first, her expression carefully composed. "Mom, can we talk? Privately?" I shook my head. "I'm working." "This is more important than work," she insisted. "Nothing has been more important than work for 40 years, I replied. "Why start now?" Jason tried next, his approach more direct. "Mom, what's going on? Are you in financial trouble or something?" The concern in his voice almost weakened my resolve. Almost. "I'm fine, Jason. Better than fine, actually." "Then why sell the diner?" he pressed. "This place it's home." "A home you visit when you need money," I pointed out. His face fell. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I met his gaze steadily. By closing time, the news had spread through the neighborhood. Mr. Wilson lingered over his coffee, watching the family drama unfold. "You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest," he observed. I sighed. Not intentionally. "Sure about that?" His eyes twinkled. "Seems to me you knew exactly what would happen." Perhaps he was right. That evening, my kitchen became a family. War room. David paced while Rebecca sat rigid at the table, and Jason slouched against the refrigerator. "You can't just sell without consulting us," David insisted. "We should have a say." "Why?" I asked simply. The question seemed to stun him. Because? Because we're family. Because Dad would have wanted us to keep the business. Don't tell me what your father would have wanted, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Frank Taylor trusted me to make the right decisions. That's why he left everything to me. Left everything to you, Rebecca repeated. What do you mean? I realized my slip. The diner, the property. It's all in my name. Of course it is, David said dismissively. But he meant for it to stay in the family. Did he tell you that? I asked. David hesitated. Well, no, but... Then you don't know what he meant, I concluded. I do. Jason pushed away from the refrigerator. Mom, is this about Thanksgiving? Because if it is, I'm really sorry. This isn't about one day, I interrupted. This is about years of being taken for granted. Years of supporting all of you, while being treated as an afterthought. Rebecca's eyes widened. Is that how you feel? Yes, I admitted. That's exactly how I feel. Silence fell over the kitchen. For once, I had their full attention. What can we do? Jason finally asked. To make it right. I looked at each of them. My children. Now adults with lives of their own. You can accept that this is my decision to make, not yours. David shook his head. I can't accept that. There has to be another way. There isn't, I said firmly. The decision is made. As they filed out, Rebecca lingered in the doorway. Mom? Are you okay? Really? For the first time in our conversation, I heard genuine concern in her voice. I'm finding my way, I told her honestly. That night I sat on the porch swing, listening to the cicadas. My phone buzzed with texts from all three children, ranging from apologetic, Jason, to concerned, Rebecca, to angry, David. For once, I didn't respond immediately. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them feel what I'd felt for years. The following Sunday, I called a family meeting at the closed diner. I arrived early, arranging old photo albums and files on one of the larger tables. Linda had offered to attend for moral support, but this was something I needed to do alone. David arrived first, Emily trailing behind him, looking uncomfortable. Emily, I greeted her with a hug. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure if I should, she admitted. David says things are tense. They're about to get tenser, I replied honestly. Rebecca and Chris arrived next, followed closely by Jason, who had apparently convinced Sophie to join him. The diner felt crowded with all of them there. My children and their partners seated around the table, eyeing the paperwork I'd arranged. Thank you all for coming. I began formally. Like we had a choice, David muttered. I ignored him. I've called this meeting because there are things you need to know. Things I should have told you years ago. About selling the diner? Rebecca asked. About everything, I replied, opening the first photo album. About your father. About this business. About our family. I turned to a photograph of Frank and me standing in front of the empty storefront that would become the diner. Your father and I bought this place with a loan from my parents. Did you know that? 3 blank faces stared back at me. I thought Dad got a bank loan, Jason said. Banks weren't eager to lend to a young couple with no business experience, I explained. My parents remortgaged their house to help us. I flipped to another page, Frank and me behind the original counter. We worked 18-hour days for 5 years straight. No vacations, no weekends off. We know you worked hard, Mom. Rebecca said gently. You don't, I countered. Not really. I pulled out the first file folder. This is your father's life insurance policy. David leaned forward. The one that paid for our college tuition? There was no life insurance, I said quietly. Your father's policy had lapsed during his illness. The premiums were too expensive while paying for treatments. Stunned silence fell over the table. But how did you pay for our education? Rebecca asked. I took out a second mortgage on the diner, I explained, and worked double shifts for 8 years to pay it off. You never told us, Jason whispered. You never asked, I replied simply. I opened another folder. David, remember when you crashed your car senior year, the one we'd bought for your graduation? He nodded uncomfortably. The insurance didn't cover it because you'd been drinking, I continued. Your father wanted you to face the consequences, but I couldn't bear to see you lose your scholarship over one mistake. You paid for the repairs, he remembered. I sold my mother's jewelry, I confirmed. The pieces I'd planned to give to Rebecca someday. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. Mom, I had no idea. Rebecca, I turned to her. When you and Chris were struggling after Tommy was born, those anonymous gifts of groceries and baby supplies, her eyes widened. That was you? We thought it was Chris's parents. It wasn't, I confirmed. And Jason, the 3 times you were about to be evicted, those clerical errors where your rent was mysteriously paid? Jason looked down at his hands. I figured the landlord made a mistake. He didn't, I said quietly. I covered it each time. Why? David asked, his voice subdued. Why hide all this from us? Because parents protect their children, I replied. Because your father and I agreed we would never burden you with our struggles. But after Dad died, Rebecca began, you should have told us. Would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have seen me differently? The silence that followed was answer enough. I opened the final folder, the diner's current financial records and the property appraisal. The diner and property are worth just over $2 million. David's head snapped up. $2 million? Downtown property values have increased substantially, I explained. Plus 40 years of successful business operations add significant value. And you're just selling it? Jason asked. It's mine to sell, I reminded them. What about us? David demanded. What about our inheritance? There it was, the question that revealed everything. Your inheritance, I repeated, slowly. You mean the business your father and I built through decades of sacrifice? The one none of you have shown any interest in, except as a source of income. That's not fair, Rebecca protested. We have our own careers, our own families. And I've supported all of those, I interrupted. College tuition, down payments on houses, childcare, emergency loans. I've given and given while asking nothing in return. We're grateful, Mom. Jason insisted. We just never knew. You never asked, I said again. You assumed the diner would always be here. You assumed I would always be here, ready to help, to give, to support. You took me for granted. Emily, who had been silent throughout, suddenly spoke up. She's right. David turned to her, shocked. What? Emily met my eyes. Your mother has been supporting all of us for years. When was the last time any of You asked what she wanted? "Thank you, Emily," I said quietly. Chris cleared his throat. "So what happens now?" I closed the folders deliberately. "I sell the diner. I use the money to finally live my own life." "And us?" David asked. "You're adults," I replied simply. "You'll manage, just as I had to after your father died." As they filed out, each lost in their own thoughts, I felt no triumph, only a bittersweet sense of relief. The truth was, finally, out. Linda called later that evening. "How did it go?" "Exactly as expected," I told her. "The truth hurts." "Sometimes it needs to," she replied. "Did you feel better afterward?" I considered the question carefully. Not better, but lighter. Word spread quickly about the diner being for sale. Elaine Cooper had found several interested buyers, and the first was scheduled to tour the property during business hours. I hadn't planned it that way, but part of me was glad. Let them see the diner in action, the community we'd built, the lives we'd touched. I was serving pie to Mr. Wilson when David burst through the door, a stack of papers clutched in his hand. "We need to talk," he announced loudly. "Now." Linda moved to intercept him. "David, your mother's working. This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," he insisted, brushing past her. "Since she's determined to sell it out from under us." Conversations quieted as customers turned to watch. I remained calm, setting down the coffee pot and wiping my hands on my apron. "David, I'm with customers." "They should hear this too," he said, voice rising. "They should know what's happening to their favorite diner." Mr. Wilson set down his fork. "Son, that's no way to speak to your mother." David ignored him, slapping the papers onto the counter. "I spoke to a lawyer. He says we might have grounds to contest this sale based on Dad's original intentions." I stared at him, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Your father's intentions are not in question. The legal documents are quite clear. Dad never meant for you to sell this place." David's voice cracked with emotion. "He built it for us, for the family." The diner had gone completely silent. Every eye was on us, but for once I didn't feel embarrassed or afraid of causing a scene. This moment had been 40 years in the making. "Your father," I said clearly so everyone could hear, "built this place with me, together. Our hands, our savings, our dreams." I picked up the papers he'd brought and glanced at them briefly before setting them aside. "And he trusted me to make the right decisions when he was gone." "This isn't right," David insisted. "You're being impulsive." Impulsive? I actually laughed, the sound startling even to my own ears. "I've spent 40 years putting everyone else first. There's nothing impulsive about this decision." Rebecca and Jason appeared in the doorway, apparently summoned by their brother. They looked uncomfortable as they took in the scene. "Tell her," David urged them. "Tell her she can't do this." Rebecca shook her head. "David, stop. You're making a scene." "A scene?" His voice rose even higher. "Mom's selling our birthright, and you're worried about a scene?" "Birthright," I repeated, the word finally igniting my anger. "Is that what you think this is? Something you're entitled to just because you were born?" I moved around the counter to face him directly. "This diner exists because I showed up every single day for 40 years. Before dawn, weekends, holidays, when I was sick, when I was grieving, when I was bone-tired. I was here." My voice remained steady, but I could feel years of unspoken words finally breaking free. "Where were you, David? Where were any of you when the pipes burst 2 winters ago and I spent the night mopping up water?" Where were you last year when I had pneumonia but still opened up because people count on their morning coffee? Linda stepped forward. I was here, Martha. I remember. Mom, Jason began, we didn't know. Because you didn't ask. I finished for him. You saw what you wanted to see. An old woman who would always be here. Always put your needs first. Always say yes. I turned to address the silent customers who were witnessing it all. I've served some of you for decades. You've watched my children grow up. You've seen me age. You were here after Frank died, when I could barely make it through the day. Several nodded, including Mr. Wilson, whose eyes were suspiciously bright. This diner has been my life, I continued. But it's not my whole life, not anymore. David's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by confusion. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've earned the right to choose what happens next, I replied firmly. The diner is for sale. That decision is final. And what about us? He asked, his voice smaller now. You're all successful adults with careers and families, I answered. You'll be fine. Rebecca stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. Mom's right, David. This is her decision to make. You're taking her side? David's shock was evident. There aren't sides, Rebecca responded. There's just the truth. We've taken Mom for granted. All of us. Mr. Wilson stood up from his stool. If I might say something. I nodded, curious. I've been coming to this diner for 30 years, he began, addressing my children. I've watched your mother work harder than anyone I've ever known, never complaining, always with a smile and a kind word. He turned to me. Martha deserves to live her life on her own terms. And if you can't see that, he addressed my children again, then you haven't been paying attention. A smattering of applause broke out among the other customers, making David's face flush with embarrassment. Jason approached the counter. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I know, I said, touching his hand briefly. This isn't over, David warned, though his voice lacked conviction. Yes, I replied firmly. It is. As he stormed out, Emily lingered, behind, approaching me awkwardly. He'll come around eventually, she offered. He's just struggling with change. We all do, I acknowledged. After they left, Linda flipped the sign to closed, despite it being an hour early. I think we've had enough excitement for one day. The remaining customers filed out, each stopping to squeeze my hand or offer words of support. Mr. Wilson was the last to leave. You did good, Martha, he said simply. Frank would be proud. As I locked the door behind him, I caught my reflection in the glass, a woman standing straighter than she had in years. The week following the confrontation passed in a blur of routine, punctuated by unusual silence. My phone, normally alive with texts and calls from my children, remained eerily quiet. The diner continued to operate as usual, though customers now watched me with new eyes, some with admiration, others with curiosity. On Thursday morning, Linda found me in the office reviewing offers on the diner. David called, she informed me, asked about our supplier contracts. I looked up, puzzled. What did you tell him? That he should talk to you. She hesitated. He's not giving up, Martha, I sighed. He's always been the most stubborn of the three. Wonder where he gets that from, she remarked with a knowing smile. That evening, I was weeding my garden. When Rebecca's car pulled into the driveway, she stepped out alone, no children in tow. Mind if I join you? She asked, approaching tentatively. I handed her an extra pair of gardening gloves. These weeds won't pull themselves. We worked in silence for several minutes before she spoke again. Tommy asked about you yesterday. Wanted to know if you were still his grandma, even if you didn't have the diner anymore. What did you tell him? That you'll always be his grandma, she replied. That some things don't change. I nodded, focused on pulling a particularly stubborn dandelion. Mom, Rebecca began hesitantly. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about taking you for granted. I waited, giving her space to continue. When Dad died, you seemed so capable, like nothing could break you. Her voice caught. I think we all just assumed you'd always be that strong. I had to be, I replied simply. You all needed me. But who did you need? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. No one had ever asked me that before. I don't know, I admitted finally. I never let myself think about it. Rebecca put down her trowel and faced me directly. I'm sorry, Mom, for expecting so much and giving so little in return. Something tight in my chest began to loosen. Thank you for saying that. Is it too late? She asked. For us to do better? It's never too late, I assured her, reaching out to squeeze her hand. But things will be different now. Different how? I'm selling the diner, I confirmed. And I'm going to use that money to live a life I've put on hold for 40 years. She nodded slowly. And what will that life look like? For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine it fully. Travel, maybe. I've never seen the ocean. Your father always promised we'd go someday. I could go with you, Rebecca offered, tentatively, if you wanted company. The suggestion surprised me. What about your job? The children? She smiled ruefully. Chris can handle the kids for a week, and work will survive without me. I've never taken a real vacation either. As we finished gardening, something subtle had shifted between us. A new understanding, fragile but real. The next day, Jason stopped by the diner during the afternoon lull. Got a minute? He asked, sliding onto a counter stool. I poured him coffee without asking. For you? Always. I've been thinking, he began, turning the mug in his hands. About all those times you helped me out. The rent, the loans. Jason, you don't need to. I do, he interrupted. I need to say this. He took a deep breath. I've been taking advantage of your generosity, and it's kept me from growing up, from standing on my own 2 feet. The admission clearly cost him, and pride welled up in me at his honesty. Sophie says I need to start making my own way, he continued. She's right. We both know it. What are you going to do? I asked. I got a steady job. Construction crew. He looked up, a tentative smile on his face. Not glamorous, but it's honest work. Your father would be proud, I told him. He always respected people who worked with their hands. Jason nodded. I remember. He hesitated before adding, I also wanted to say, I think you're doing the right thing. Selling this place, I mean. You deserve to live your life. His support, so unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Jason. Any word from David? He asked. I shook my head. Not directly. Linda says he's been asking questions about the business. He'll come around, Jason said, though he didn't sound convinced. Maybe, I acknowledged. Maybe not. Either way, I need to move forward. As Jason left, Mr. Wilson took his vacated seat. Family reconciliations? Some, I admitted. Not all. He nodded knowingly. The hard ones take time. Sometimes lots of it. I refilled his coffee cup. What if that time never comes? Then you accept it, he said simply. Living well is still the best revenge. That evening, I sat on my porch swing watching the sunset. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, a picture of Tommy and Lily holding a hand-drawn card that read, "We love Grandma." For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot in my chest truly begin to unravel. Whatever came next, with David, with the sale, with my future, I knew I could face it. The invisible woman was finally being seen, even if not by everyone. On a crisp morning in early October, I signed the papers selling Taylor's Diner to James and Maria Chen, a young couple with 2 small children and big dreams. We promise to honor the legacy you've built, Maria assured me, her eyes bright with excitement. James nodded earnestly. We're keeping the name, Taylor's, and we'd love it if you'd stop by sometimes, share your wisdom. I'd like that, I told them honestly. The sale was finalized for just over $2 million, a sum that still felt unreal to me. Mr. Jenkins had helped me set up investments that would provide comfortable income for the rest of my life, with plenty left over. Linda stood beside me as we watched the Chens measure the dining room, already planning small renovations. 40 years, she mused. Hard to believe it's over. Not over, I corrected her. Just changing. What will you do with yourself? She asked. Without the 4 a.m. alarm clock? I smiled. Sleep until 6, for starters. The Chens had asked Linda to stay on as manager, recognizing her value immediately. She'd agreed, relieved not to start over elsewhere at her age. And then, she pressed. I bought a ticket, I admitted, to the coast. I'm going to see the ocean finally. Her face lit up. Martha, that's wonderful. When do you leave? Next week. Rebecca's coming with me. Linda's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? Really? I confirmed. She's taking a week off work. We're going to walk on the beach and eat seafood and drink wine on a balcony. Dreams do come true, Linda said, squeezing my arm. Not all dreams, though. David still hadn't spoken to me directly. Emily called occasionally with awkward updates, but the rift between my oldest son and me remained unbridged. He's processing, Emily would say. He'll come around. I wasn't so sure, but I'd made peace with that possibility. Some prices are worth paying, even when they break your heart. The weekend before my trip, Jason and Sophie helped me sort through decades of accumulated possessions. We filled boxes for donation, created piles for family members, and laughed over forgotten treasures. Mom, what's this? Jason asked, holding up a small leather-bound book. I took it from him gently. Your father's recipe book. All the original diner specialties are in here. The secret apple pie recipe? Sophie asked with interest. And the meatloaf, I confirmed. All of it. Jason watched me curiously. You didn't give this to the new owners? No, I said firmly. Some things stay in the family. I placed the book in his hands. You should have it. His eyes widened. Me? But David's the one who... David doesn't appreciate where these recipes came from, I interrupted. You do. That evening, after they'd gone, I sat in my quieter, emptier house and opened the small envelope Mr. Jenkins had given me at the closing. Inside was a cashier's check, my first distribution from the sale. Frank's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. You did it, Martha. You stood your ground. For once, I didn't feel guilty about putting myself first. The morning of my departure for the coast, I woke to a knock at my door. When I opened it, I found Tommy and Lily on my porch, Rebecca waiting by the car. "Surprise, Grandma!" Lily exclaimed, thrusting a small gift bag into my hands. Inside was a journal with Grandma's adventures embossed on the cover. "For your trip," Tommy explained solemnly, "so you can write about the ocean." I hugged them both, my heart full. "I'll write every day," I promised. Rebecca approached, carrying my suitcase to her car. "Ready for our girls' trip?" For a moment, I thought of all the times I'd put my dreams on hold for others. All the trips not taken, experiences deferred, moments missed while I stood behind a counter serving others. "More than ready," I assured her. The coastal cottage we'd rented faced the ocean directly. The first evening, as the sun began to set, Rebecca and I sat on Adirondack chairs on the small deck, glasses of wine in hand. "To new beginnings," she toasted. I clinked my glass against hers. "And old wounds healed." We watched the sky turn, spectacular shades of pink and orange, the vast ocean stretching endlessly before us. "I never understood," Rebecca said quietly, "why you and Dad never took vacations, even small ones." "We couldn't afford it," I explained, "not with 3 children and a business to run." "But after we grew up." "After you grew up, your father got sick," I reminded her gently. "And after that, I guess I forgot how to want things for myself." She was quiet for a moment. "I don't want to make the same mistake." "Then don't," I said simply. The next morning, I felt the ocean waves lap against my feet for the first time. The water was colder than I'd expected, but the sensation of sand shifting beneath my toes was exactly as I'd imagined. Rebecca took photos of me standing at the shoreline, arms outstretched, laughing like a child. "You look happy, Mom," she observed. "I am," I realized, truly happy. We spent the week exploring coastal towns, eating fresh seafood, and walking miles of shoreline. Each night I wrote in the journal my grandchildren had given me, preserving memories I'd waited a lifetime to make. On our last evening, Rebecca's phone rang during dinner. Her expression changed as she answered. "Yes, she's right here," she said, then handed me the phone. "It's David." My heart raced as I took the phone. "Hello?" "Mom." His voice sounded strained. "I heard you were at the coast." "Yes," I confirmed. "Rebecca and I are having a wonderful time." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I've been thinking," he finally continued, "about everything you said, about taking you for granted." I waited, giving him space to find his words. "Emily helped me see that I've been unfair," he admitted. "I expected to inherit something I hadn't earned." "David, please let me finish," he interrupted. "I'm not there yet. I'm still angry about the diner, if I'm being honest, but I don't want to lose my mother over it." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was a beginning. "I don't want to lose my son either," I told him. "When you get back," he said hesitantly, "maybe we could have dinner. Just the 2 of us. I'd like that very much." After we hung up, Rebecca watched me cautiously. "Everything okay?" "It will be," I said. "Eventually." When we returned home, the real work of rebuilding relationships began. Weekly family dinners became a new tradition. Sometimes at my house, sometimes at Rebecca's. Jason brought Sophie more often, and even David and Emily began to attend regularly. The conversations weren't always easy. Old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But something fundamental had changed. They were seeing me clearly for the first time, and I was allowing myself to be seen. A month after selling the diner, I made a significant donation to the local food bank. When asked why, I explained that hunger had been my own family's struggle many years ago. The food bank established the Martha Taylor Community Kitchen in recognition. That Thanksgiving, exactly 1 year after I'd sat alone with my untouched feast, I hosted dinner again. But this time was different. Jason arrived early to help cook. Rebecca and her family set the table. David and Emily brought dessert, a pie from Taylor's Diner, now under new ownership. "The Chens send their regards," David said, setting the pie on the counter. "Though they say it's not as good as yours." "Of course it isn't," I replied with a smile. "They don't have the secret recipe." As we gathered around the table, my children, their partners, my grandchildren, I took a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought us here. The invisible woman was invisible no more. The matriarch who had been taken for granted was now valued and respected. "Before we eat," I said, raising my glass, "I'd like to make a toast." All eyes turned to me expectantly. "To family," I began, "both the one we're born into and the one we create. To hard truths spoken and hard lessons learned, and to new beginnings, which are possible at any age." As glasses clinked and conversation flowed, I caught Jason watching me thoughtfully. "You know, Mom," he said quietly, "you were right about one thing." "What's that?" "Sometimes you have to set your own table before anyone else can join you." Looking around at the family gathered in my home, imperfect, healing, trying, I knew he was right. I had finally created space for myself, and in doing so, made room for something better than what was lost. The ocean still called to me, and there were other dreams waiting to be fulfilled. But for now, seated at the head of this table, surrounded by the family that was finally seeing me clearly, I was exactly where I needed to be. Winter arrived with unusual gentleness that year. Soft snow dusted the town like powdered sugar, transforming the familiar landscape into something magical. From my kitchen window, I watched the snowflakes dance in the streetlight's glow, cradling a mug of tea between my hands. The house was quiet now, after the bustle of the holidays. David and Emily had returned to Minneapolis with promises to visit again in spring. Jason and Sophie had moved into a modest home just 3 streets over from mine, his construction job having turned into a steady career with benefits. Rebecca called every Sunday evening without fail, a ritual we both now cherished. The journal my grandchildren had given me sat open on the kitchen table, half filled with memories and reflections. I'd taken to writing each evening before bed, not just about my adventures, but about the ordinary moments, too. The weight of a grandchild falling asleep in my lap, the satisfaction of growing my first successful garden, the quiet joy of reading an entire novel in a single afternoon without feeling guilty about it. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Through the window, I recognized Linda's car in my driveway, its headlights still glowing against the gentle snowfall. "Come in, before you freeze," I called, opening the door wide. Linda stomped snow from her boots and unwrapped her scarf. "You won't believe who came into the diner today," she announced without preamble. "Surprise me," I replied, already pouring her a cup of tea. "Elaine Cooper." I paused. "Our realtor. What did she want?" Linda accepted the steaming mug gratefully. "She's representing a developer. They want to buy the entire block, including Taylor's." My stomach tightened. "And? The Chens are considering it. The offer's substantial." Linda watched my reaction carefully. "They wanted me to feel you out about it. See how you'd react." I moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street where I'd spent my entire, adult life. "It's not my business anymore," I said finally. "I sold it. Yes, but the Chens care about your opinion, about your legacy." That word again. Legacy. Once it had seemed so clear what that meant. The diner. Passed down through generations. Now I wasn't so sure. "What would they do with it?" I asked. "Tear it down?" Linda nodded grimly. "Mixed-use development. Retail on the ground floor, apartments above." I was surprised by my own reaction. Not the grief I might have expected a year ago, but a calm acceptance. "Everything changes, Linda. Even institutions like Taylor's." She studied me with narrowed eyes. "Who are you, and what have you done with Martha Taylor?" I laughed. "I'm still me, just evolving." After Linda left, I opened the leather-bound recipe book I'd kept for myself, an identical copy to the one I'd given Jason. Frank's handwriting filled these pages, along with notes I'd added over the decades. Little tricks and substitutions, memories of which customers favored which dishes. Running my fingers over Frank's familiar script, I realized something important. The diner had never been about the building itself. It had been about the connections made there, the community we'd built, the lives we'd touched. That legacy couldn't be demolished by any developer. The next morning, I called James Chen and invited him and Maria for Sunday dinner. If they were going to make this decision, I wanted them to do it with the full picture, not just of Taylor's past, but of their own possible futures. On Sunday, they arrived with their children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5, the same ages David and Rebecca had been when Frank and I first opened the diner. "Mrs. Taylor, this is too generous," Maria protested as I served a full spread, including Frank's famous meatloaf. "Martha, please," I corrected her gently. "And it's my pleasure. Consider it a belated welcome to the neighborhood." Over dinner, the conversation flowed easily. The children told me about school, about their friends, about the changes they'd made to the apartment above the diner, the same apartment where I'd raised my family. Linda mentioned the developer's offer, I said finally, as James helped himself to seconds. The Chens exchanged glances. "We wanted to talk to you about that," James admitted. "We feel conflicted." "The money would secure our children's education," Maria explained. "But we also feel a responsibility to what you built." I considered them thoughtfully. This young couple with dreams not so different from the ones Frank and I had harbored all those decades ago. "When we opened Taylor's," I told them, "everyone said we were crazy. The economy was struggling. We had small children, no experience in the restaurant business." I smiled at the memory. "But we had something more important, a vision of creating a place where people felt at home, where a cup of coffee came with conversation, where no one ate alone unless they wanted to." The Chens nodded, understanding. "Whatever you decide," I continued, "that's the legacy worth preserving. The spirit of it, not necessarily the bricks and mortar." "What would you do?" James asked directly. I looked at their children, happily eating pie at my table. "I'd make the choice that lets you sleep at night," I said simply. "The one that honors both your past and your future." As they prepared to leave, Maria embraced me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." I watched them drive away, feeling a sense of completion. The torch had truly been passed, and whatever they decided, I had made peace with it. The following week, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Wilson. "Martha," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "I need a favor." Within the hour, I was at Riverside Hospital, sitting beside his bed. At 87, he looked suddenly frail, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. "Pneumonia," he explained between labored breaths. "Doctor says I'll recover, but it might take time." I patted his hand. "You've always been too stubborn to let a little thing like pneumonia keep you down." He smiled weakly. "There's no one else I could ask. My children are in Seattle and my sister—" "Say no more," I interrupted. "I'll check on your house, bring in your mail, water your plants. Whatever you need." Gratitude shone in his eyes. "You're a good woman, Martha Taylor." "Just returning the favor," I reminded him. "You've been a good friend to me all these years." As I drove home from the hospital, I realized how much my life had changed in just 1 year. The weight of obligation that had once defined my every waking moment had transformed into something else: chosen connections, deliberate kindnesses, relationships based on mutual respect rather than expectation. That evening, as I watered Mr. Wilson's African violets and collected his mail, I thought about the strange twists life takes. A year ago, I'd felt invisible, a fixture in others' lives without needs or desires of my own. Now, I was making choices based not on what others expected of me, but on what felt right and true. The phone rang as I was locking Mr. Wilson's front door. "Mom?" It was Rebecca. "I've been thinking about something." "What is it, dear?" "Remember our trip to the coast?" "Of course." I smiled at the memory. "My first time seeing the ocean." "Well," she continued, excitement building in her voice, "what would you think about another trip? Longer this time. I was thinking... Italy?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Italy? Rebecca, that's something you've always wanted to see?" she finished. "Dad used to talk about taking you there someday." Tears sprang to my eyes. "You remembered." "I've been listening better lately," she said softly. "So what do you say? 2 weeks in September? Tommy and Lily could stay with Chris's parents." As she outlined the tentative plans, Rome, Florence, Venice, I felt a lightness in my chest, an expansiveness. This was what freedom felt like, not the absence of connections, but the presence of ones freely chosen and mutually cherished. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady and sure. "Let's go to Italy."